So Nadège, I'm so glad that you're here with us in Spartanburg. So much looking forward to working with you this week. Tell me a little bit about what your relationship with music is. Where did you grow up? What made you interested in music as a kid?
Well, I was born in Calgary, Alberta, in Western Canada, and I fell in love with music. Actually, I think I was a musician before I did anything else. I am one of those children that was lucky enough to see Elgar Concerto playing on Sesame Street, and I begged and begged for a violin, which my parents finally got for my 3rd birthday. So I actually still have that violin, and right now my son plays it. So I started violin at 3, and we had a piano in the house, and I started playing piano at 4 and studying. My older sisters also started music at about that time, but the big influence I actually remember watching Elgar Concerto playing on Sesame Street.
So that must be one of your very first memories, right? If you would have been too at that time.
It is one of my first memories.
Wow, fascinating.
And I think, just that attraction to the sound of the violin is what sparked my interest. But I was not a visual child as much as an auditory child. Mm-hmm. So that my world was always filled with listening to the sounds around me. And I think that, along with my interest in music, kind of propelled me towards the beginning interests in music. My mother is a painter and artist, and always thought that music was an important part of an education. And when I was about 6, we were really lucky. She got tickets way up in the rafters at our local opera house, at Calgary Opera Company. And I can't believe she took me when I was 6, but she took myself and my 2 older sisters to see the Calgary Opera. I remember the productions that I saw. We saw The Magic Flute. Mm-hmm. We saw Carmen. I thought, I want to be Carmen when I grow up. Terrible idea, but
for a lot of reasons.
But it was really exciting. That role sounded really that her power and the music just drew me in.
Sure.
And I was an extremely shy child, which kind of is a strange juxtaposition of wanting to be like Carmen when you grow up and also not really speaking very much as a child. But I can still remember that production. I could still remember those experiences, and I also remember being able to look down and see the conductor and see the musicians in the pit. And that's when I thought, that's what I want to do. That I'd always been interested in the sounds of instruments, but that role of not facing out, but facing in and drawing the sound out of the orchestra was really my first vocational ambition. It's something I always wanted to do.
And that was something that was present from the very first experience of watching a conductor.
Experience.
Interesting.
Yes.
And then, so as you were going through school, was that something that you were bearing in the front of your mind, or was that just sort of kicking around the back as you were examining other areas of music and other kind of career possibilities?
Well, I started on violin, and then I studied piano, and when I reached my rebellious teenage years, I decided to do, well, I'm not sure if it's because I was a rebellious teenager or whether it was just because it would have happened anyway, but I heard of viola for the first time when I was about 11. And
the sure signs of a teenage hellraiser gets her hands on a viola.
Well, it was a big, I'm not sure if my mother actually didn't want me to play as much as she said she didn't want me to play viola, but I secretly took an old violin that had been her student violin that was a little bit larger and clunky, and strung it as a viola, and started secretly playing viola in my orchestra program with the guidance of the conductor, who was a violist. And I taught myself viola, and I auditioned for the National Youth Orchestra of Canada. This was before I actually started taking lessons. It was a long shot to, even if I had been taking lessons, it was a long shot. I was actually 13 at that point. And they accepted me and invited me to be their principal violist. I think most people would say, or would have said, oh, she's going to be a violist. Uh-huh. And so the path for me was so quickly into big performances and competing on a national scale. And I was invited to Juilliard when I was 16 by Karen Tuttle, the viola professor there, who I had met at Banff. And she called me up and said, you have a place at Juilliard if you want it. You have to come and do the formal audition, but you're going to win the audition. So why don't you come? And so I went. I was 16. I went to New York City on my own. I was so scared to cross Broadway in Amsterdam. I stood on that corners of the street for a good 10 minutes. I'd never seen a street that big before in my life. I made it there, and I got the invitation. So I went to Juilliard for my undergrad degree. However, I hadn't graduated from high school yet. And the registrar came knocking on my door in my first semester and said, Nadège, you're missing a couple credits for your high school diploma. You better get your GED. So I did that. And that was my bachelor's degree. Yeah. Now you were
Luckily, at least it was Juilliard, so there was some precedent for that.
Well, I think it's a really good question about conducting, because conducting was always on my mind. That wonderful teacher that I had that had guided me into viola was also a conductor. And he had said at one point a comment that actually was quite disturbing, and it really stuck with me. It still sticks with me today. I still remember it. He said, at one point, I had said something about conducting, and he had said, women's brains don't work the same way as men's. They don't understand scores the same way. And, it's today I can say, yes, well, maybe it works better. But I internalized that, and that was a message that at some point I didn't know how to progress as a conductor, and everybody was showing me the path as a violist. So there was also part of me as a musician. I think a lot of classical musicians do feel this way. I wanted to become fully proficient on my instrument. I wanted to be able to play everything and do everything before I did anything else. So, for me, that meant playing the big repertoire, playing the big concertos, being able to master all the etudes, all the different, the repertoire.
Right.
And I did get to that point when I went to Yale for my master's degree.
Now, were you studying viola or conducting?
Viola, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So I was really fortunate. I also have to say, along with being fortunate, I am a very hard worker. So I prepared for my Yale audition by practicing 365. I practiced for a full year, 6 hours a day, full year before my Yale audition. And they did call me and invite me to Yale on a full scholarship. So that was, what do you say? Well, yes, you say yes, because it's an amazing opportunity to study at a world-class institution. And for me, going back to having not quite finished high school, I thought, okay, this is my chance to finish my education as a human being, because there's something amazing about Yale, which is if you get into one of the universities, you can study any of the other courses in any of the colleges.
Right.
So that was the chance for me I studied literature, I studied politics, I studied architecture, I studied all these other subjects that if I had stayed in high school a little bit longer, I think I don't know, would I be a musician today? I'm not sure, probably, but it was a good cap to a missing part of my knowledge. my professor Toshi Shimada said, Nadège, you are ready to conduct. You don't need to study conducting. Go form an orchestra. You're ready. You know what you need to know. You know how to move your body. You know how to do this stuff. So I took his advice and I went to, I moved back home to the Hudson Valley where I was living at that time and formed an orchestra.
So tell me about that in that case. So tell me about the orchestra. What was the process of forming an orchestra like? Because there's obviously the kind of thing of, okay, we can make music together, but presumably somebody wants to get paid somewhere along the line. So there would have been a lot of work going on behind the scenes as you did that, right?
Yeah, I think actually from conception to our first fully paid concert, it was actually only 3 weeks. I think that I came to, it was extremely easy for me to do this because I had a large network of musicians who I was friends with as a violist.
Yeah.
So I already had a large network of people I played chamber music with. I played in the Hudson Valley Philharmonic. I played in the Albany Symphony. I had friends that supported me and wanted to play with me and had already played with me when I led from the violin. So as a concertmaster. And I think that there was a need in that community and there was a desire to make music. And that ensemble, the mission was to perform lesser known works by master composers. So there's a slew of great repertoire for chamber orchestras that never gets performed that I think a lot of these musicians just were interested in playing. I also did a lot of fundraising, and we said we're going to pay scale or above scale for everything. I think it's really important. As a musician, I knew that was important, and recruit the best musicians we can. So that orchestra was from 2009 to 2014, and for a variety of reasons, one of them being that I was ready to deepen my own education as a conductor. I actually went to grad school to study conducting. So that's the point where I went and I did a doctorate. First I did a diploma in contemporary European repertoire in Switzerland, and then I went and I did a doctorate in Montreal. I mean, I think if you were going to say what is different about your path, I think my path as a conductor is probably more traditional if you look at older conductors, because I am an orchestral musician. I come from the orchestra. I have 25 years of playing in the orchestra, under my belt. And so I think that informs how I lead, and it informs my role on the podium. I was conducting. I had such respect for the word conductor that I would never say I'm a conductor, even when I was conducting, because I thought to myself, I'm not a conductor yet. There's no way I'm a conductor. Kind of like, you say you don't get a violin and say, oh, all of a sudden I'm a violinist. You have to master the instrument. So it took me a long time to actually get to the place where I would be comfortable to say, oh, I'm a conductor now.
Interesting.
So.
So to circle back to the comment from your teacher all of those years ago that was, well, women's brains are different, and the implicit discouragement of that, it's something that is really weird to me, the degree of sexism regarding female conductors specifically, and how even as late as into the 2000s, this was still a question. And it seems so really bizarre to me, even as a musician myself, that, for instance, I could see it. Look at the firemen or something. Yeah, you've got to carry people out of buildings or something. I could see there being a sort of sexist pushback against that. But it's really strange to me after all of these years to still hear the experiences that so many female conductors have had.
He might have had another agenda because he was my viola teacher and I was a violist. But I do think we are all different. Everybody's different. Every man and every woman is different. Every person's different. I think actually women are incredibly well suited to being conductors because we are good multitaskers. And I think that there are also great men that are great multitaskers. But I think that there are a lot of skills that women learn and have that are great for leadership, especially today. I mean, I think we're also moving away from a top-down style of conducting,
Sure, yeah.
where people say, this is how you do it. You do it like this, and don't say anything, and don't give your opinion, and don't do anything that I don't show you. That was the old way.
Right.
And nobody wants to live in that anymore. Nobody wants to play in that. So I think there's room for a different type of leadership. And, I think the previous generation of female conductors did feel pressured to conduct the same way and lead the same way. And I have no interest in doing that. I'm a collaborator. I want to, if anything, I'm first among equals. I want to have people feel absolutely free to be musicians and musical and come to the stage with their ideas about what they're playing. If we don't align, we can talk about it. And that's the same thing with the soloist. I haven't worked on this concerto with Claire yet, but we've talked on the phone. Do I know that all her rubatos are going to be like what I have in my head? I'm not sure yet. We'll find a way. We'll find a path together. And I think that that's part of the joy of music making, is that you are actually interacting and responding and giving and taking. There's not, it's a play, and it's not always the same. Like if we were to play together 3 nights in a row, it would be a different Dvorak or a different Schumann. Not drastically different, but it would depend on the hall and the responses, and perhaps somebody plays their line a little differently, and you want to respond differently. And that's what is beautiful, just like great acting, or any other art form.
And certainly within this Elgar Concerto, there is a ton of opportunity for dialogue between conductor and soloist.
Yes.
Right? So that is going to be, tell us a little bit about what that is like when you're on the podium in real time, kind of adjusting what you're doing and adjusting your guidance that you're giving to the orchestra as you're processing on a kind of second-to-second basis.
I actually think accompanying might be the reason I'm a conductor. I love accompanying. I love accompanying soloists, and for me, this is repertoire that I've known my whole life, and it is amazing to be able to just respond and be quick and respond quickly and listen. And I love doing it. I mean, I think some conductors are extremely fearful of, conducting with a new soloist, doing concertos with a new soloist. But it's one of my most favorite, exciting times. So we'll see what happens.
And certainly this is a piece that, there are continually things are bouncing back and forth among the two.
I mean, I think
there's very little moments where you can just, I'm just here.
No, it's definitely, it's moving. And there is a responsibility in this particular concerto to make sure it doesn't go too far off the track. I am a literalist. I always start from the score, and I really respect the score. So if it says allargando, calando, a tempo, that's where I'm coming from. I start with that. If the soloist wants to do a little tweaking here and there, okay, a little tweaking, but let's make sure the integrity of the structure of the piece is kept. So that's always a big thing for me. Like, I have the big picture of the piece, the big picture of the movement, and I want to make sure, okay, we can take a few liberties here if you want, but let's make sure that this section here that's supposed to mirror this section actually mirror each other. It's not like 10 clicks slower just because you wanted to do it, a big glissando or something. So, or if we do the big glissando, we'll find a way to capture the time in a tasteful and musical way. Yeah.
So to talk about the big picture and to place this concerto in the big picture of this program, can you talk a little bit about the relationships between this concerto and the symphony, between this concerto and the Jennifer Higdon piece?
Sure. So this was a fascinating experience of programming. I actually was given the past programs of the Spartanburg Philharmonic for, I think, 5 years or something like that. and I looked through everything the orchestra had played. And I thought, are there any holes in here? Are there any major works that haven't been played or haven't been played recently? And the Higden was one that popped right up. I thought, oh, this orchestra hasn't played this piece. This is a piece that this orchestra needs to play. And the Schumann is extremely, I love Schumann. I mean, I really love Schumann. I think, I'm laughing because of your question, which opened up a can of worms. So I will talk to you about that question. The augmented sixth question. Schumann is a fascinating composer. This piece hadn't been played for a long time. I think 7 years or something, or 8 years.
Yeah,
It definitely needed to be played again. So that's how I picked that along with the Elgar. I thought to myself, I would like to bring an artist from South Carolina to Spartanburg. And I thought, oh, Claire Bryant, she's in South Carolina. So that was a dialogue with her. Okay, I thought the Elgar would work well. I asked her if she would consider playing, and she agreed. So that's how the program got glued together. It was really looking more at what I thought would be good for the orchestra. And then building a program around that. I mean, I have a very wide, eclectic taste in music. So, I mean, I love the classics. But I'm also very interested in new music as well. So it could go anywhere. And I'm always in love with whatever I'm working on. So that's, it doesn't matter what that is.
So let's talk a little bit about this Higden piece, if that was the one that started this program, if that was the germ of things. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Sure. Well, it's about 12 minutes, and Jennifer Higden wrote it in 1999. So she was in her late 30s. It is a memorial to her brother who passed away from skin cancer. And she uses the flute and the clarinet to represent her voice and his voice in a passage through time. It's really an interesting piece in that she uses almost every technique that a composer could use. I mean, if you want to see a study in great composing, this piece is it. It starts out with the percussion playing different chimes and bells. In a way, it's written to give a sense of timelessness, which is actually incredibly detailed. To be able to write, to make time not have time, it's amazing when you look at the score. So it starts out with this timelessness, and it's very tricky for the orchestra because almost everything is played off of the beat. As you play the flute line, I'll do my best to give you clear beats. So that's a fascinating entry. And I would say even tonality-wise, it's in Western tonality, but she uses sounds from other worlds. And I think that helps this idea. I mean, what she's describing, I think, was the transition of her brother from this life to the next life. And the piece has different sections of this timelessness, and then in about the golden section, there's a
so around 2/3 of the way through.
2/3 of the way through, there's this amazing brass fanfare that she says represents hope. So there you get structure again, and then the piece fades away into like this percussive and prepared piano, non-structural. I don't know if it's going to be a wild ride. You would never imagine when you hear the beginning that you would ever get that triumphant and loud and exciting. And then it dissolves. It's also within that 12 minutes, you can't believe it's only been 12 minutes because it's a lifetime. It's this whole passage.
And it's one where I can tell you from having spent a little bit of time with the parts that it's very idiomatic for each of the instruments as well. And that's one of those things that as an audience member, it's sometimes kind of tough to sort out. Did the composer make choices that make it easy to play and easy for the instrumentalists to sound good on and be comfortable in? Or did she make choices that make it hard to play and make it hard to be comfortable and sound good on? And this is one where she makes really, really canny choices.
Oh, yes.
As far as I can tell, even with the things about the sort of extended techniques when she asks them, or the things about asking people to play secondary instruments. She times it in such a way and presents it in such a way that it actually falls together.
Yes.
I think pretty easily.
Yeah, and any of the choices. So, for example, there's one choice that is fascinating. We have lines of solo violas and solo cellos, but when you look at what they're playing, they're actually playing so high in the register. It could have been played by violins, but she's chosen the high register of the lower instrument to get that particular sound. She obviously knows exactly what she's doing. Mm-hmm. And then why 3 trumpets? She has 3 trumpets. That's for these brass sections, 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, and it balances the brass in a way you've never heard before. There's some really beautiful choices. And of course the musicians later play bells and crystal glasses, which give other effects, completely otherworldly effects. Yeah. So, yeah, she's an interesting person, and I think we're just lucky to get to do this piece.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And so this Schumann symphony that we're playing touches on the notion of a cathedral as well, right? Was that one of the things that was in your mind?
It was. It was. I mean, I think that the Schumann, it's such an interesting piece. Yes, and the 3 trombones again in the 4th movement, which I just recently realized and learned that Schumann, whenever he uses 3 trombones, it is a reference to death. That's something I didn't actually know. I was talking to my husband about this 4th movement. I was like, this movement really, I said, I really think that this has something to do with loss for him. And then I read later, okay, actually it did. And so, that translates beyond, this is what we're at, 175 years later. It still communicates to us exactly what it's about without any program notes. Mm-hmm.
Now, you had a little bit of a relationship with Claire Bryant, with this week's soloist, before this performance, right? Tell us about that.
Yes, we almost became roommates in New York City a while back. I was looking for an apartment, and she was looking for a roommate. It didn't work out, but she and I have several friends in common, and several close friends in common, and I've always wanted to work with her. She's a fascinating person. Mm-hmm. She has a very interesting career, and she does work in the community that goes beyond being a cellist. And that I thought would be very important to bring and feature her here in South Carolina. As she's from here, and she does this other work in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So often we fly somewhere new to work, and we have a tenuous tie to the community. Here we have a soloist from the community who's done amazing things with her career, so she should be celebrated here. I'm looking forward to working with her.
Yeah, and speaking of flying into a community, this is not your very first time in Spartanburg, I've been told.
No, it's not.
I've been told that you visited us once before. Could you tell us about that?
I was here in 2002 for the BMW 2002 Fest. Where I had just purchased my first car and drove and participated in the festivities. So I am a big Beamer lover, and I have driven the track in Spartanburg.
Okay, so you've driven the track.
I have driven the track, and I would love to go back. So if you can't find me on Wednesday night, no, I'm just joking. I am a big car enthusiast. So that's also a really neat thing to be back here in Spartanburg.
And rumor has it that is not the only track you've driven.
No, I've driven, I think I've driven 5 tracks in the Northeast. So I'm a good driver. You can trust me with your orchestra.
Okay, good. But as far as I know, you will be the only conductor that I've ever played for who also races cars, who
Yes.
has raced cars at least, and that's an exciting little notch to add to my resume as well. So it's been delightful to talk with you. I'm so glad to have you joining us in conducting us. I'm looking forward to working with you this week, and I'm looking forward to seeing what results it brings for us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.